This is another comment and response video. I said before I wanted to get these out a little bit more frequently so they don't add up to this huge, monstrous video that takes hours. So we're going to do this one within a relatively small time frame since the last one. I like to do these because it's hard to get across all of my thoughts just in text-based form in a reply. Also, I have a small enough comment pool that I can get away with this. Like if tons and tons and tons of comments are flying in, this would be impossible. So why not do something different and strike while the iron's hot, or while it's still kind of cold, perhaps. If your name is not Michael Papp, you might find this video a little boring because a lot of these comments recently were from this one guy. So bear that in mind. This is still just a comment and response video, even though it's just kind of centered around the same few people. This is a response to my last comment response video. Jeffrey Combs plays a good anyone. It's a great way of saying it. He does play a good anyone. Your idea of Enterprise Season 5 is so tantalizing. I would love to see it. Yeah, I mean, our actors are getting old now. It's going to get harder and harder for this to happen. Every year that goes by, this gets more further away, right? Because you can no longer write a convincing scenario with these characters all looking 20 years older. Just about, it doesn't make sense anymore. But it would have been so awesome if we had just continued, or even say they canceled Enterprise, and then 5 years later, they decided to come back and do a season 5 that was just like 10 episodes, which was short for the mid 2000s. That would have been so cool. Say in 2010 or something. Man, just to wrap it up, just do like a TV movie. Why are we so afraid of TV movies? They used to do that a lot, where there'd be a 1 hour long or an hour and a half hour long movie for television, and that, to me, that would be good for Star Trek. It runs in line with what you want in terms of length, beginning, middle, and end, and budget. TV movie. I think that's what we should have got. If we couldn't do a season 5, do an hour and a half or an hour long, 2-episode, hour long, super mini series TV movies kind of thing for season 5. Just to get across, Shran is on board, we refit the Enterprise, and we just cover key moments of the Romulan War. It would have been awesome. It was just getting good. It was just, Enterprise was just getting really good, and they just canceled it. Still mad about it. I actually really love having multiple Trek shows on at once. Brings to mind the golden... Yeah, I recognize that there was a time where there was multiple Trek shows on, in pre-production and generation being made. It was all very exciting to me then. Yeah. Reading about potential of new series spin-offs, even audio dramas. Now, yeah, audio dramas, that's that Khan thing. That's a weird idea. I'm curious, but I feel like Khan should have a movie. I think it'd be cool. But if we had one show, a lot of people will like it. I think there are a variety of shows. There'll be something for everyone. My thinking, yeah, you're not wrong. But my thinking is that there was a time when Star Trek that we did have was for everyone, right? The one show was for everyone. Maybe this is a better idea, having multiple shows. But they also used to really try to make a show that was for every single person. It was for everybody. Like TOS was, or TNG. My wife was bored to... My wife was bored to tears by TNG. Except The Offspring, which broke her soul. However, she's obsessed with Discovery. So much so as a point that she gets mad if I watch it for the first time without her. She really empathizes and relates to Michael Burnham and Tilly. Yeah, I like Tilly too. And Michael Burnham... I thought she was good in season 4. It makes... Season 4, Michael Burnham makes sense. She basically cries every time they do. So a lot, haha. Yeah, the cry... At the very end of season 4 of Discovery, Michael Burnham, she cries at the very end talking to the Tennessee. And it felt like it was actually appropriate. It felt like it meant something when that happened at that moment. That was actually pretty good. Like, it's weird. Season 4, Michael Burnham starts working for me. Like, she was always supposed to be the captain. It was obvious the way they were writing it. And then she finally became the captain, and now it kind of makes sense. Right? But then we kind of disappear Tilly. However, I mean, I like Tilly. I like Tilly right from episode 1 of Discovery. And then every episode, she just got worse. They just stopped caring about her, and now she's just gone. It's horrible. My point is, one show might not be for everyone. It's better, in my eyes, to have a few flavors on the table. Teen audience show. Oh, Starfleet Academy. God, I wish that was real. Starfleet Academy show. People have been wanting that for like over 30 years. People have been talking, oh man, imagine if there was like a Starfleet Academy show. Comedy, Lower Decks, Classic Trek, Strange New Worlds. Serialized drama, sci-fi, Discovery. Wholesome family sci-fi, bro. Wholesome family sci-fi. Prodigy. Picard was... ... Picard was also on. Picard is the one that, like... We already have Discovery. Why do we need to kind of do the same thing again? Like, if Picard... It just doesn't find its place. It doesn't... Picard doesn't do any one thing well. Many types of shows can attract more viewers and hopefully spread Trek's messaging further. Yeah. Of all these shows, Picard Season 3, I'm looking the least forward to. But I know those reviews are going to do numbers. It sucks. Yeah, that being said, Prodigy ended a little bit weak, but... Excuse me, I'm having my space coffee here. Prodigy, yes, I still think is my favorite single season of all New Trek is Prodigy Season 1. It's not even it's not even close. Like, maybe Lower Deck Season 2, number 2, for New Trek seasons. Number 3, Lower Deck Season 3, and then number 4, probably a tie between Strange New World Season 1 and Lower Deck Season 1. And then I'm not totally down. This is going to sound weird, but I'm not totally down on, like, Discovery Season 1. I thought they were kind of trying to do their own thing, and I was able to accept that. Like, it was so different that I was like, okay, there's something going on. And then they realized that it sucked, and then they kept, oh no, look, we're Star Trek still. And then they just kind of muddied the water. Like Season 2, one note constantly, we're chasing it for a thing. Get Back Here, Red Angel became Get Back Here, Book. See? Although the ending for Season 1 of Discovery was awful. It was wrapped up. The writers for Season 1 of Discovery, I think, came up with that ending in 5 seconds. Let's just beam a bomb into the core of the Klingon homeworld, and then they'll just give up. It's horrible. And it didn't fall in line with what was being, like, tonally set up for Season 1. It's obvious that by the end of Season 1, they knew people weren't liking it. So they just change it around, blah, blah, Spock's coming back. At least the Enterprise looked good. Like, objectively, the Enterprise in Discovery looks good. Right? It's not right. It's wrong. But it looks good. Like, I'm tough enough to just admit these things. I do feel your idea for Lower Deck Season 3's ending would have been satisfying to see. There's nothing cooler to me than seeing Starfleet science their way out of a situation. That's my favorite Trek film, is the one with the whale. My favorite Trek film was the one with the whales. I've heard this multiple times from people. Like, it always shocks me how popular that movie is. Like, my whole life, I thought this one was kind of like, it's fun, but it's kind of like, this is kind of like the one where they're taking it easy, like making this movie. Let's just have some fun. And they made The Voyage Home. And the more time goes on, the more people I see out of nowhere just say that's my favorite one, it's interesting to me. Maybe I'll just have to watch it again, or pay really close attention. I have the novel. I don't know if it's the novel version of The Voyage Home, but it's the one, like, it kind of gets into what the whale probe is, and I should read that. I think I started it and didn't finish it. I can't remember. The crew used their brains and wits to figure out a solution to execute it. The only time there's even a phaser is when Kirk... Yeah, they cheated, though. They went back in time and gave that guy transparent aluminum. Transparent aluminum? Aye, that's the ticket, laddie. And, like, Scotty's using the computer to, like, put in the chemist's formula for, like, transparent aluminum. And I think he, like, talks into the computer. Hello, computer. Excuse my ancient mouse here. And then he starts typing on the keyboard, and it gets faster and faster and faster and faster and faster. Because, of course, an often forgot Star Trek thing is that the average person here in like, Star Trek is, like, a genius. And they're, like, have access to teaching technology that we couldn't even dream of. So Scotty can just look at the keyboard and then just get faster and faster and faster the more he looks at it, because he's availed himself of future training techniques, right? We often forget this, but the average person is a genius, right? Makes it hard to write. There's no violence, no revenge, no hatred. There's no villains. I love it. Correct. I like the motion picture. There's no hatred. There's no villains per se in the motion picture. It's you're battling an ancient mystery that turns out to be connected to you. It's interesting. You should like the motion picture. It has a good message and it's well told. It's, in my opinion, the perfect Trek film. In my opinion, the perfect Star Trek film is like the motion picture mixed with, like, Star Trek 6 with just, like, maybe just a dash of First Contact. Whatever that movie would be the best possible Star Trek movie. I think the simplicity of the victory is due to the limited runtime. I'm noticing that with a few different shows now. At the end of the season, they just got to speed it up. The best and the worst thing about Lower Decks, it's written like an episode TNG, therefore it follows a lot of the same beats, feels structurally familiar. Those structures are made for 50-minute shows. Cutting the time in half makes for an occasionally rushed-feeling episode. You have to cut stuff or make things simple, expedite the resolution, and tell the overall story you want. Yeah. I don't mind the half-hour-long episodes, but I don't know why we have to have it, why we're just, like, seem to have only 10 episode seasons now. Like, Lower Decks season 3 should have had, like, 15. And same with Prodigy. I thought Prodigy should have had 2 more, maybe. Thanks. Again, from a previous comment video. I didn't think the communications relay in Asylum was rotating. Yeah. I don't want to get into this again. I thought it would be in an orbit, just, the floating there. And my guess was supposed to have been moving in the same direction and speed as the station, or else it was just as stationary. When the connection was severed, momentum would have kept it moving past the debris field. If it was in an orbit where the station's stationary, then the only thing moving the protostar should be the energy from the explosion. I can't imagine force from umbilical cable being enough to move a starship. Edit, take comfort, you're not alone. I too think a lot about stuff like this. Yeah, I wasted way too much time thinking about that. But thanks for your concern for my well-being here, so I don't go crazy. Yeah, I love space stuff. Okay. I read a lot of books on it. It is not a qualification by any means, but if you've heard of this video game, Kerbal Space Program, it's super fun. Everyone should play it. I played that game for about 3,000 hours. So I mess around a lot with Newtonian physics. Frankly, I've wasted too much time of my life worrying about that stuff. to try to parse out this comment again. I don't want to think about this situation again. Thanks a lot, Michael Papp, though, for for telling me to take comfort. I will take comfort. Michael Papp, this is a response to that one guy who was like really mean one time in some comment. That guy Jim was out of line. I stand by my assessment of your opinions. They aren't mean-spirited. I find your opinions to be understandable. You explained them pretty well. Yeah. This guy, this Jim guy, he was just saying, like, basically I, like, wasn't allowed to, like, dislike these other shows, and I wasn't allowed to compare this current show to them, and, like, oh, well, I should be able to talk about this show and why it's good and bad and whatnot without referencing anything else, which doesn't make any sense. You would never use that standard for something you liked. Like, if I was reviewing this show that he liked, say, I don't mean to put words in his mouth, but this is just a guess. It would probably work out that I would be able to reference whatever I wanted as long as it was positive. But as soon as it goes the other way, I'm not allowed to reference something negatively. Like, who would think like that? Like, it just in reality, humans reference things in order to get their idea across. Like, if I'm trying to fix something, I might say, oh, this is kind of like that time when we had to fix that thing, so we should just do that to fix this, right? Like, we have a data bank of knowledge in our brain for a reason. That being said, I made an effort not to reference stuff I didn't like while reviewing the next few episodes. Surprise to no one, he never came back to thank me for doing that. I drastically cut down on the amount of times I dumped on Star Trek shows I didn't like in the rest of my, like, Prodigy reviews. He never said anything about that. But thanks for Michael Papp standing with me on that one. Again, from Michael Papp, TNG Season 1 and 2 were wild in a way. There was that ineffable Gene Roddenberry style of the seasons. They felt like scripts that went into the maybe pile for TOS. They felt the most like TOS because of it, which is why they didn't quite work sometimes. TNG needed to be itself instead of what... Yeah, exactly. I think we can both agree Season 3... Season 3 is where the season became, like, TNG. On a side note, Season 2 is super underrated. I do think... I like Pulaski. I first read this comment. I couldn't believe I found someone that liked Pulaski. I thought Pulaski was good. Pulaski was, like, a warm blanket. And, I've never been a big fan of Crusher. She's just kind of bland. She's just kind of there. But Pulaski is like a warm, prickly blanket that you can put on for safety, but then also you might get pricked by a thorn on it, and she might, like, get smart with you, and then you'll think about it, and it's like, oh yeah, she was right all along. That's right. She's like your mom. She's like everyone's mom. I think it was interesting to have that for a chief medical officer. It was something different. It was a little bit more bonesy. It was a little more McCoy-ish, but more relaxing. I think it was good for TNG. But then Crusher just came back. She had an actual character arc. Yeah, she didn't like Data at the beginning. Do you notice that? Like, she called him Data. Why do you call me Data? Well, that's her name, isn't it? Data is not my name. What's the difference? One is my name and one is not. Or something like that. Just going right off the top of my head what they said in that one episode where Data was talking to Pulaski. She was mean to Data. You can accept people that early on in TNG being mean to Data because Data is a robot, right? Like, and ultimately, he died a robot. Like, he was just... Your memory of Data is whatever reflected off him back onto you, right? But as we learn, that's what it means to, like, be a person. So he is ephemerally a person, right? It's interesting. Then she became one of his supporters and friends, exactly. She had to learn to loose her prejudices, and that was such a good lesson to see. Yeah, it was good. I like Pulaski. I don't know. Kind of wish she stayed. I lived through a long period of people dunking on Pulaski, saying they didn't like her, and I don't understand. I never understood why. I never understood why people just love Crusher. Crusher is good only because of the way her history with Picard was written into it. It wasn't that her character was fun or interesting or good. It was just that, she knew, she was like Wesley is her son, and Wesley is Jack Crusher's son, and Jack served with Picard and the Stargazer. Like, that's basically, you basically learn Crusher's character in the first episode of TNG, and that's basically who she is at the end. Like, you could get into the weeds about it. I don't feel like getting into the weeds about it, but I think maybe Michael Papp understands what I'm saying. Michael Papp, for all the world's a stage. I'll bet the reason why the town's nacelles are so ample is because they are on New Enterprise. As we saw in the movies, the New Enterprise has those types of nacelles. Feels like a sweet visual gag to me. I never put that together when I first watched this, but it makes sense for it to be a joke. These people aren't from the Enterprise. They build their New Enterprise, and curiously, it looks a little bit like the 2009 Enterprise. Makes you think. I never noticed that at first. For the same episode, I Am Not a Nugget Blackheart. I think for a kid's show, doing self-referencing is a good idea, especially for kids with low attention span, since you need to repeat things and sometimes have them remember certain things from other episodes. It needs to have that kid element in order for it to work as a kid's version of Star Trek, so repetition and that usual kid-like humor and attitude is standard fare for these types of shows. Yeah, I see why they do these things. Like, I mean, I know why it will reference itself over and over again, because you need to hammer home ideas for kids. That makes sense. You're right. But I can still, point out that, it's not perfect. Like, it's not, like, it's hard judging this as a kid's show. It's like you want to review it like this is this normal Star Trek show, because it feels so much like it is. It's so good that you really have to be in a different mindset. So thanks a lot for that, Michael Papp. I don't mind the inclusion of the Enterprise. It's the type of fan service that didn't feel forced to me. It could have been any ship. It was the one we love. True. It's like you said, a person was unfamiliar with the Enterprise. It would not hinder their understanding or enjoyment of the plot. I didn't know the Ensign was an actual TOS character after I'd seen the episode. That's fine. He's just a red shirt to me, albeit with a beautiful and honorable death. I was still moved by his words and story. Knowing who he is now only makes the episode he was in all the sadder. Like watching family for the first time after generations and sobbing your eyes out. Yes! Yes, I love the episode Family. It's not important that it's a character from the Enterprise, but it's an acceptable reference. Like I said, I would have rathered something else, but maybe I should just not look a gift horse in the mouth and just enjoy it. Maybe I'm wrong on this. Maybe it's just fun that it's the Enterprise, and maybe I'm just being old and crotchety and stupid. Thanks a lot, Michael. And then for Crossroads, Michael Papp, very simple comment here. I love your insightful interpretation of this episode. Thank you. I think the Diviner is still injured. Doesn't mean he's not going to get better and try to play the Dauntless crew later, though. I truly believe he's capable of what you're suspecting. I only think he's not yet well, though. When he saw the protostar, it seemed like he was just remembering for the first time to me. I mean, we know how Prodigy ended. My theory was incorrect. He was still brain damaged at this point, and he wasn't putting on a false face. But it would have been cool. Murph can give hugs now. Yay. He's like the baby brother of the group instead of a pet now. That's a great evolution for Murph, I think. I think the episode's theme was Dal and Vice Admiral Greenways. If he had followed her advice, there wouldn't be a miscommunication at the moment. Yeah, communicating was a big deal in Prodigy. Communication was like a core tenet of this series, I think, or season so far. The lack of talking, is identified as a number one point of failure whenever something crumbles. They identify lack of communication as the number one problem. And I think that was on full display here. Did you notice the aliens chasing the kids in Okana were reptilian Zindi? Yes. Word. Yeah, they were. I noticed it because of not the face, the clothes. The reptilian Zindi have that unique kind of like piped clothing design that is very unique, and I was like, it just stuck out to me. I was like, oh wow, it's one of those Zindi guys wearing those outfits. The Zindi are cool, by the way. It's cool that there was, like, often in Star Trek, civilized planets will often be dominated by just one species, like one sentient species. Why couldn't it have been more? Like, why? How come you don't find planets where there just isn't a bunch of different sentient species that over the time of their evolution are just in deadlock and never were quite able to beat each other? It's like they come up with this idea that's really cool for the Zindi, and then it just doesn't come back. Like, I would design a lot more planets where there's just like two different species on the same planet, and you have to like address the fact that there's two and they're different and they're both Zindi. Like, isn't that like cool? Like, introduce a few planets where there's two different species. They're both called whatever their planet name is, and like you have to make special arrangements for each one. Like, that, it seems like something that would have kept going, but it was just an Enterprise and like not much else. Or I'm just trying to think of an example. It's not coming into my head. Masquerade. I thought the Stardate joke at the beginning of the episode was pretty funny myself. It's exactly how a frustrated teenager who was probably really tired and anxious would feel, especially if he wasn't used to telling time by that method. I've been watching Star Trek for over 30 years. I still have no idea how Stardates work. I know. I related to Dal pretty solidly there. Haha, yeah, I don't... I'm supposed to know how Stardates work. Right? But, I'm guilty of typing them into the console and then just having to spit out a Stardate, and I'll just trust it without knowing how it works. I'm guilty of that. Michael Papp again for the same episode. Regarding the adolescent fantasy of Dal's, I definitely had more than a few too. It's pretty harmless in my opinion. My real disappointment is in Dal came later. Come on. He didn't follow Janeway's sagacious advice after he remembered it. Some people only really understand their mistakes after they've made them. Dal is evidently one of them. Still, it seemed Dal learned his lesson by the end there. I'm looking forward to seeing his continued character growth. His character did grow. Masquerade, possibly the most important Dal episode. Right? Like, you can't skip it. Like, I don't love it, but you can't skip it. So it's interesting. A turning point for Dal's character. My impression of the whole Murph phaser situation was they got them without anyone knowing. It's more like a case of not locking the weapons and a kid getting into it. Which is equally as terrible as handing phasers to one, no question, unless Murph gooed their way through security panels. We don't know how malleable Murph is. Odo could get into a secure panel or area, yeah, no problem. Could be Murph is... I just realized. Wouldn't it be cool if Murph met Odo? No problem. Could be Murph is similar. They did, after all, somehow get into the holodeck and activate a Himalayans program. Maybe they came in through the arch. That might have caused the system to activate a random program. Just glad it wasn't Barclay. Yeah, I don't want to just, start up Barclay's program. Just walk in like it's nothing. Or start up Geordie's Leah Brahms program. I wouldn't mind that one. uh, Rok-tahk was excited by the standard space station looking place because she'd never seen one before. Everything and everywhere is new to these kids. They will be amazed by what we experienced sci-fi viewers might find repetitive. That's exactly true. Everything is new to these characters. But if it's new to the characters and new to us, that's double new. So isn't that just objectively better? Like I get why the characters are excited, but I kind of want to be excited too. That being said, Star Trek's been around for a long time, and I imagine writers are starting to have a hard time writing interesting places to see now. It's got to be getting hard, I must say. Something must have happened to all those written research documents Sung made in prison. He was told they were burned. Doesn't mean they were. Could be someone kept them. Section 31 maybe. Probably. The research may have gotten out another way. A guard or official felt the same as he did. Kept the research safe until the proverbial heat died down. Section 31, without spoiling anything, has been around for a long time. It's older, not necessarily in name, but in organization. Has been around since forever. I guess you're getting tired of the same old song and dance. Ayo. Yes, I am. Getting a little tired of everything being connected to this one family of people, and they all look the same. Like, who would have thunk it? What are the chances of that happening? Murph gets away with it because Murph is Murph. I think that's something I said in that review. Murph gets away with it because Murph is Murph, and that's a fact. Okay? It's true. Murph can get away with basically anything, and it's fine. I believe that. Yo, homie, how are things at the Dingwall? Phantasmic. Nice space lingo here. That's the space version of fantastic, if you didn't know. Okay, let's... Ghost in the Machine. I completely understand why you would want to create your own engineering in the holodeck. That would be a perfect opportunity to just go wild on engineering experimentation without having to worry about any damage to your ship. Yeah, I know. It would be really cool to be able to create an exact one-to-one duplicate of this room and do whatever I wanted to. I could basically do that now. There's no one around to tell me anything else. There's no one around to stop me, other than the potential for me killing myself and killing the crew by destroying the warp core. So, the Protostar Prodigies. My favorite baseball team don't need practice dealing with trauma. Their whole lives have been traumatic. If they hadn't learned to endure the pain, they wouldn't be alive, I think. I felt like them eating ice cream and pity partying. Pity partying. When you say it like that, it sounds like it's a real party. Pity party sounds like something sad, but the pity partying, it sounds like you're having a good time. Was a way to share your pain in a way they couldn't before. It's easier to live with trauma when there are trusted companions to empathize and support each other. I feel like Ice Cream Sea was my favorite of the episode. I really want that ice cream, that cool yellow ice cream with purple triangles in it. What is that? I want that. I, too, would watch Murph lip sync and dance for 10 hours. Even better if he uses some Vic Fontaine songs. Maybe that video's coming up. Her dad's hollow image was previously established in episode 11. Yeah, I look back and you were right. There was a hollow of the Diviner before. As interesting as it would seem to have Gwen chat with a holographic version of her father, I don't believe she'd seen the hologram again until she sat down at the bar. Your inference regarding Dal's captain program is brilliant. Makes perfect sense. I wonder if he reviews famous missions of Starfleet captains in order to see what they did in specific situations. He did simulate the bridge of the Enterprise D, remember? And that's kind of in the same vein. But I can totally imagine him reviewing key Starfleet moments before and seeing what they did in each situation, because he takes it really personally. He takes failures personally, and he wants to better himself, and he wants to be the captain. And I actually think Dal doesn't just say that. I think he means it. I think he is reviewing holodeck things in the holodeck. We already had a self-contained holodeck adventure by this point. Kobayashi qualifies as such, in my opinion. Yeah, in your opinion, it kind of it's a holodeck episode, but by adventure I mean like, like swashbuckling, acts of daring do, swinging in off a chandelier, that kind of adventure, a little bit more romantic, kind of like which was how holodeck adventures were previously established. Because we spent all the time on the bridge in old episodes being real Starfleet people, we would use the holodeck for like Robin Hood adventure time, right? So it felt to me like a holodeck adventure where you were just on the bridge kind of wasn't an adventure. It was just like a holodeck, simulation / excursion. I feel like the concept has been established enough. Pro viewers now to Trek aren't seeing the tech as problematic. In fact, the holodeck didn't function at all. It performed its order. Yeah, okay, that's good. The holodeck didn't fail. That's good. I'm far less harsh in this episode. Not saying you hated it or was trashing the show, but I loved it. One of the best in the series so far. The heartbreak on Holo Janeway's face when she learned of her unwilling betrayals. The whole reveal itself was fantastic. I thought it was the Romulans. I didn't see it coming. I think when Janeway asked for Dal's command codes, I thought it was totally in earnest. Like, it got me. I was tricked, which is good. They left behind a program on a non-essential system to put Dal's command code. Turns out I was right about the motive, wrong about the culprit. Yeah, it hit it pretty good. There's no way real Janeway would go along with them in the Protostar. What scenario can you come up with to make that, like, it's amazing what happened immediately after this. We're talking about, there's no way Janeway can get on the Protostar, and then we do a mind swap between Dal and Janeway. This show. Maybe the Protostar crew rescue her and some other crew members from the Dauntless, and they stay on the Protostar for a while to try and disarm the living construct. I think the Dauntless is more or less taken over by Vindicator, Diviner, Dreadnought at this point. That never happened. That was weird. Weird to me that Dreadnought and the Diviner and the Vindicator can be on the Dauntless and not take it over. That seemed really weird to me. You could be right about that. We very deliberately did not get resolution of the whole sitch on the Dauntless. Yeah, they just kind of let the plan go through, and we just living constructed some shit up. It was weird. Like, I kind of thought the Dauntless would just be under the control of the Diviner entirely. I know exactly what you mean about missing glaring errors even after the staring at something forever. I used to draw. I still do. One time I did a piece I was proud of, Witches around Cauldron. Only for one of them I completely forgot to put any shadows for her on the ground. Spent days drawing. It took my bro 2 seconds to notice it. Yeah, the problem of the artist is that they get accustomed to their own creation and they can't look at it with fresh eyes. They lose that ability. So it's really good to have somebody you trust who can just look at something and point out its flaws. I always try to do that before I show people things. Like, I try to have like trusted circle of people who will look at it and like tell me if it's bad or if there's something wrong that I didn't notice before the general public sees it. I draw like an awful lot my whole life. It goes hand in hand with 3D modeling. One skill carries over to the other because attention to detail is a big factor in both drawing and modeling. You'll notice in the background that the attention to detail is not super high for this piece here because it's animated and frankly it's for comedic purposes, so it's not incredible. But for still images, there's a lot of detail in them, to the limit of what my computer will allow. Right, like I hit the outer limit of like what my PC is capable of often with 2D images. But the 3D images take the 3D modeled flat images and then the modeled animations take forever to animate. So if it's animated, it has to kind of look bad. But this channel isn't super serious, so it's not the end of the world to me. Yeah, maybe I'll do another drawing stream. I got a few ideas. Murph is the true hero of the series. That's right. Mind Walk again. I'm constantly listening to the Prodigy soundtrack on Spotify. Or, Spotify. Like we said in this. It doesn't look like an N. Maybe I'm blind. Yeah, I listen to it all the time. I love it. Mind Walk. Strong disagree. I'm a huge fan of a fleet of ships warping in every time, except at the end of Picard Season 1. Of course, I loved Riker. He was badass in his classic poker face. The disappointment I felt in seeing only one kind of ship ruined the cool factor for me. I'm not super into like the 2009 like blink out and then blink in kind of like thing. Like it's just it felt there's something about it that feels tactically like not a good idea. Like if you were fleet commander, you would probably tell them like, okay, don't all show up at once. Like, show up, like, minutes apart and far away so that we can't make visual contact that easily. Hide behind things. Maybe, like, be inside a nebula. Like, you don't need to be within 1,000 kilometers to attack in space. Like, you can be millions and millions of kilometers away. You can be far enough away that relativity is factored into your targeting solution, if you know what that means. Supernova Part 1. About time. Yeah, shithead, it is about time, isn't it? What is this here? I'm not a nugget blackheart. Supernova Part 1. Do you think it would make more sense from a kid's perspective? I'd be less concerned about those consistencies than I would about hoping they survive by next week. I often wonder what kids actually think about this show. And then Michael Papp. Larry Nemesek, his granddaughter, does occasionally review Prodigy with him. She's about 8 to 10. Seems to love the show, especially Gwyn and Murph. I like Gwyn and Murph a lot too. This is weird to me because Nemesek, like that's like an unusual sounding name. But the thing is, my dentist had a name that was similar to that. I'm not going to dox him because it's such a unique name, but his name was kind of like that. Supernova Part 1, Michael Papp again. Sean Ferrick at Trek Culture says the U.S.S. Thunderchild was at the battle. That's a ship from First Contact. I wish we saw some Galaxy-class starships as well. This would have been such a good opportunity to have the California class in a different style in the background, in like a 3D modeled kind of like more realistic look. That was so cool. An Excelsior would have been wicked rad too. We should have saw an Excelsior. There's no excuse. Like a big fleet battle like that in like 2183 or whatever it was, just off the top of my head. You're gonna see like a zillion Excelsior classes at that time. Like you're just gonna. They're not gone yet, and we don't have the Excelsior 2 yet from Picard Season 2. They're just gonna be there. Like it's weird that they're not. I love the Sovereign, not really, but I love seeing the Sovereign. Although I'm not a huge fan of the Sovereign. I like seeing it there, so I'm happy the Sovereign is there. I love the Akira class. I love the Centaur. I believe was all over the place there. Needed Excelsior, needed Galaxy class, and a Miranda here and there would have rounded out really well for this time period. I always wanted to see more of the Ambassador class, but I'm willing to admit that now enough time has gone by where if you started seeing the Ambassador class again, they would need to explain it. like explain why it was just kind of gone forever. I mean, behind the scenes reasons we know why, but I always wanted to see the ambassador class more. We saw like, what did we get like so far in all of Star Trek? Like 4 different official ambassador classes, and like 10 galaxy classes or something like that, and a zillion Excelsiors. What's the deal? My guess is that bad guys figured they would be in charge of the protostar while the plan was in effect. They would be running away right after hailing someone, going on from base to base, ship to ship. I don't think it occurred to them the living construct would be activated when no one on their side was aboard, which is an oversight. Correct me if I'm wrong, Lieutenant, but didn't it look like the virus was being transmitted by phaser fire? What? This is for Supernova Part 2. Virus is being transmitted by phaser fire. No. I never saw that. It feels like that's not impossible, but I didn't see it. It may have looked like that. I'll definitely go back and look and reply to that if I see it. I never noticed that. But I can see how if your phaser is like red and the virus is spreading and turning everything red, it could look a lot like the phaser was spreading the virus, which would have been cool. Like maybe they could say, oh, we managed to put a piggyback carrier wave on the phaser fire, and we modulate the phaser fire, the frequency of it, to hack the shield generator to give it the virus, right? Like I can just write Technobabble in 5 seconds. Something like that. That could happen. I like this comment here. This is important. Supernova Part 2. Dal shouldn't need to change himself to comport to other standards. Yes. He didn't augment himself. Who does, right? Maybe somebody did, but in most cases you don't really see that. He's not responsible for his DNA. Starfleet is wrong in its biases towards the genetically altered. This is a hot button issue. This is interesting. If they say this opens the door for augments in Starfleet, you would think by Discovery Season 4 they would have maybe said that most people were augments, which would have been a great piece of writing, and then to retroactively explain it in this season of Prodigy would have been really cool. But I don't recall in Season 4 like somebody saying that, oh, most people in the Federation right now, like say Admiral Vance himself, oh, I'm like 4 different species technically, I just look human, right? That would have been cool to bring up. Not necessarily for their stance on the technology of augmentation, excluding someone for how they were essentially born, not good practices. And we have seen characters before who weren't, like Phlox in Enterprise, said that his species had mastered the art of genetic augmentation to fight disease. I think that was said. And they didn't frown too much on that. I'm very glad to see Starfleet accept Dal, no stipulations. Yeah, I was happy for them to accept Dal. He's earned it. Save perhaps for the letter of recommendation from a Starfleet officer for whose species isn't in the Federation. I noticed something about this episode that it took me like hours to understand this. Okay, like the problem, like the way Starfleet looks at this, is that genetic augmentation to fight disease is like okay. Phlox does that. And then you'll notice in this episode, specifically Janeway says, she alludes to the idea that people do augmentation to benefit themselves. It's like cheating, right? Like I said before, it was like breaking the Prime Directive on yourself because you were instilling artificial evolution, quote unquote, right? Take from that what you will. Janeway says to Dal and says to the rest of the people in the room, I mean, look at him. Who would pick traits like this? She basically just shoots down Dal at that point and says that Dal, although he is augmented, he does not benefit from it. giving them the out that Dal is not in despite the fact that he's an augment, but he is in because his augmentations are not advantageous. There's a big difference that I never picked up on when I watched this episode. Janeway just kind of insults Dal. We just accept it. And then, like, a long time later, I realized that we're trying to save face and make it look like we still can't have, like, cheaty augmentation. Because if that were the case, wouldn't everyone just be augmented? Go back to TNG, where Data talks to Picard, and Data says, what was it about? Says was he talking about Geordi's visor or something like that? Like, if this thing is not, basically the gist of it was that if these enhanced pieces, cybernetics, are objectively better, then why are we not just putting it in everybody? And then Picard basically is saying something like how, I forget what he says exactly, but I think it's to the effect that having the choice is better than being fixed without being broken, essentially. Like, I could be totally wrong in that. It's been a while since I watched it, but this conversation has come up before. The idea of just improving people, like, invasively. Like, there's a difference between, like, availing yourself of technology that improves what you're already working with. There's a difference between that and altering your starting point genetically. That seems that the Federation has a hang-up on over what I assume is because of Khan, and also I would guess that other species have had a problem with this as well, given how seriously the Federation takes it. Klingons. So Dal, like, he's the wedge in the door for this issue, I think, is maybe what we've established. If you haven't seen Deep Space Nine all the way through, don't listen to what I'm about to say. You should turn this off. There was a character in Deep Space Nine who was not born augmented, but then later was augmented illicitly, and then he basically, that was so frowned upon that it was like viewed as cheating through the Federation. It was viewed as, because the Federation, Starfleet, it's a challenge. Like, you don't just go, right? That's not for everybody. And you can look at this and look at augmentation, and you can say, oh, they're cheating, especially if it was done after they were born. But then, even after they were born, they couldn't have known. Like, what's the difference between being born this way and then being changed when you were a baby? Is there that big of a difference? I'm playing both sides here because I don't know what the answer is. Like, if they had said in Star Trek Discovery Season 4, oh, we've abandoned this blah 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 against augmentations, and in its place we have we have a special counsel that views each case, and we look at your genetic data, and we basically determine if you're cheating, or if that matters. I don't know. I can't figure out how this is supposed to work. But yeah, I'm very glad Dal got in. And like you said, it's not his fault. But we did, in this series, establish the fact that we can just alter your DNA at the push of a button. Like, I know I keep bringing that up, but it's weird that it's in the same season. It's just, it seems like it's at odds with itself. Like, Maybe they just need a better explanation. Maybe Dr. Jago should have just said, we can't use this to de-augment you. Just flat out. But we can use it to unlock the benefit from your augmentation. But yet we can't get rid of it. Like, I don't. I don't know. I'm just a little bit weirded out by the implications of what they can do with Dr. Jago in the episode Masquerade. You're not supposed to think about it this much. You're not supposed to worry about it this much. Kids aren't. But, yeah. Like, if you're an augment and you don't want to be an augment, it would be cool if you could change it. Because almost invariably, it wasn't your choice. Isn't that strange? But then they would just say, oh, well, I never chose my genetics anyway. So why can't I augment myself to be different? I never chose my genetics to begin with. It's like it works both ways. Thanks, Michael Papp, for the insight here, and thanks for just dropping the enzyme of interesting discussion into the pool of moribund boredom and allowing for a well-seasoned discussion here. Just one way entirely on my part. Thanks a lot, Michael Papp. Dow's character development in the series has been nothing short of fantastic. What a great arc in general. Generally well-written show. True. Man, it's just... Dal and Gwyn and our other characters. You just watched people grow up in right in front of you. It's a unique opportunity we had. Maybe it would take too long to print a full ship. The more technology, the more amenities, the longer it takes to build. Yeah, what I was saying was that, like, you're right. Like, you want to build a ship fast to escape from the ship. You're essentially building an escape pod, right? Let's not forget that I think the Protostar is a direct response to the Intrepid class. Thematically, behind the camera, and in front of it. What other ship has nacelles that turn like this? The Intrepid and the Protostar. What other ships made a lot of torpedoes and a lot of shuttles out of nowhere, and people are wondering, how is this carrying this many shuttles? The Intrepid, the Voyager specifically. And now we're showing vehicle replication. Very cool. But, yeah. I'm pretty sure the Vindicator told us the Diviner was initially on the side of the Federation. That was true. It wasn't until after their civil war he felt betrayed enough to be part of their revenge plot, meaning Gwyn will likely meet a younger version of her dad. Yes, they may even be allies in supporting peaceful first contact. They may even be the same age as her. You're right. He may meet with his daughter. And then, do you think Gwyn will say that she's his daughter? Do you think maybe they'll explain exactly why it is you were not allowed to have kids when you got to the other side of the wormhole? I'm still curious about exactly what the tactic behind that is, but I'm definitely curious if we're going to see them meet each other, and if we're going to, if Gwyn will use the Diviner's goodwill at that point towards the Federation to foster a better outcome. Do we know for sure, automatically, that the outcome will be the same anyway? We're technically in an alternate reality timeline now, just because we have already had the incursion through the wormhole. We're technically not in the same exact timeline that Chakotay is in now. Is it just a given that first contact will fail again? Maybe it just won't. I don't know. It's a complex problem. My guess about the Protostar class vessel was at a Starfleet Academy is because the engineering students are working on it. I've done that. I'm pretty sure that Starfleet Academy would have a hangar bay there for starship maintenance and repair practice. That literally happens. So that's a good guess for why the Protostar, or the new Protostar class ship, will be right outside Starfleet Academy. An insightful and good answer. Season 1 of Enterprise felt like it suffered from franchise fatigue for me. However, there are some exceptional moments in episodes. Yeah, I read Star Trek Explorer magazine, and it used to be called something else. Like I think it was just called Star Trek Magazine or something like that. Now it's called Star Trek Explorer. But they'll do interviews and stuff with like Brandon Braga and a few of the other people, the bigwigs behind Enterprise, and they all basically say the same thing: is that they wanted the season, like season 1 and season 2, to be totally different than what we got, but they were forced by the networks to make it just more of the same. Like anything they wanted to do different, they would get a note on their desk from an executive saying that couldn't happen, and basically they just had to retool the show to be more like just Voyager again. They just wanted more of the same. The people behind Enterprise didn't get what they wanted from the show, and I still like the show, but originally it was going to be a lot more daring, and I think that would have been a better show. My favorite scene of Star Trek, in all of Star Trek, is in season 1, where the Enterprise crew is answering questions from school. Yes, that is my favorite, one of my favorite scenes in Enterprise, where they're talking to the school kids. I also love when one of the kids sends them a mail, and it's like a drawing of a Vulcan, and the Vulcan is a green crayon and looks all ridiculous. That was so cute. It was the cutest thing ever. And then Trip is like, "A poop question, sir?" And he has to answer like, "What happens to our poop?" And it goes down and goes into the protein resequencing machine, and it gets turned into base elements that become like boots and stuff. And then Phlox has this really overly verbose answer, and then, "Okay, hurry it up, Phlox." And whatever. I love when our characters are clearly astronauts that people are excited to hear about. I love that. I love when space feels like space, and it feels so much like it in that episode. It's so lovely and wonderful and wholesome. I couldn't agree more. I see, right off the bat, I knew the whole scene because I've seen it so many times. Go back when we were watching it. Anyone who hates you for liking TV show differently than them, they have failed as Star Trek fans. I feel that too. I'll bash other shows, but I don't. I'll bash other shows. I'll question people's intelligence, but I don't I've never gone onto someone else's channel and just like spewed hate at them. Like that's not. Never. I've never done that. There's no reason for me to be upset or waste 1 minute of my life being upset that someone else likes a different show. I can't believe anybody wastes their time on that. They need to take a break. If you don't like this show, I'll say I hate it and I think blah blah, it's stupid, whatever. I'll say, oh, maybe you didn't. Maybe I might try to convince you, like, oh, your opinion is this and that, and maybe you think a little bit harder and blah blah. But I'm not gonna you're terrible. You're a bad guy. You know what? I hope you're dead. I was never gonna do that, right? Because think about it, for franchise stuff and Star Trek, the hardest thing to do is to onboard somebody. The hardest thing to do is to get them in the door. Once they're in the door, they're already on your side. Like I know people who their first experience with Star Trek was the 2009 film. After a few years, they're all watching the classic shows, right? Maybe that's not always going to happen, but just getting in the door, it's got to be worth it. If you don't like this show, somebody else likes it. Guess what? They're a million times closer to liking what you like than before, right? They're a lot. You have to admit that. So let's not burn any bridges. Did you notice the Starfleet officer in the science lab while rok-tahk was picking out a potential specialty? Only after I did the review. Yeah, I did go back and I checked out that scene, and I saw the guy from like the Enterprise or whatever, like the Starfleet guy. I would love to see how they got there. They probably just after the transmission, when they started like the transmission of the living construct, they probably got logs from the Protostar with that too. I mean, they got logs from the wormhole data to find Chakotay. They probably ended up also just getting a burst of logs from the protostar with its where it's been and all that, you know. And they probably just said, "Oh, we already made first contact with these people. Better fix it now," right? Like, once you've already made first contact, you can basically just go there and do what you want. You know, it's sad, but those people were contacted already by Starfleet, and it's, you know, their due diligence would be to go help them out, right? You know, the cat's out of the bag on that one. So they probably just sent some envoy to that planet and then just, "Hey, what's up? Why don't you come back with us to Starfleet?" And they were like, "Oh yeah, cool. We've been waiting for so long." Would have been a cool section to have. Like, would have been cool if in the credits for the last episode they did that thing where there was like a slideshow in the background of the credits where you get to see like an epilogue of things happening after the show ended. And it would have been cool to see another ship landing on that planet and all the Enterpriseians going like, yeah. Like, you know what I mean? I love those. I love endings with like a little slideshow. Would have been so cool. But talk about wholesome. That would have been wholesome to such a point I thought I probably would have had a heart attack. So maybe it's good that they didn't do that. I'm Lieutenant Mark. Thanks a lot for the comments. We're going to be getting into the design room. Maybe we're going to be doing some drawing. Maybe we'll play a game. I don't know. We've got a few more weeks left before Picard Season 3. I'm enjoying my time off from reviewing stuff. I'm not super looking forward to Season 3 of Picard, but I'm open-minded. I'm as open-minded as space is open. So we're going to see what happens. I'm Lieutenant Mark, and I'm going to see you when next time I see you. Thank you, Michael Papp, for all these comments. If you weren't Michael Papp, maybe this video wasn't super interesting. Here's to the Pappinator. I'm Lieutenant Mark. Goodbye.